Hello everyone, welcome to another artwork analysis. Now, through all these analyses, I've talked about a lot on the technical side of art, from cartoons to anime to realism. But there's one thing that ultimately art is for, and that's storytelling. No matter what field you're going into, whether it's gaming, whether it's comics, whether it's even fine arts, there's always going to be storytelling to some degree when it comes to your art. So I'm going to talk about one artist who is the epitome of storytelling, and that's Pascal Campion. Now, I apologize if I butchered his name. Again, I'm not French or anything, as with the Dofus video. But anyways, the interesting part about his work is he even admits in one of his DeviantArt journals that he's not about the technique and technical side of art. He's going to be the first to admit that he's all about the storytelling. He's not going to be the guy that renders the best cities or the perfect skin details on all his characters. What is his selling point is his storytelling, and I'm going to talk about it primarily in this video, and how he uses familiarity with his abstraction in order to create the sense of story. Then I'm going to talk about value distribution and how he uses his values, his three values that I always talk about, in a very neat manner. And also I'm going to briefly talk about quadrants and how he distributes those values in such a way that will be appealing for the composition. So, storytelling through familiarity. Why do I use that term? A big part of abstraction is you're sort of hinting towards what is familiar. Obviously, you are not rendering everything in perfect detail. You are going to simplify in such a way that is still looking like it's something, but it's familiar enough that you can get away with making it more abstract. And what I mean by this is quite simple. If I were to analyze the background here, for instance, what is your immediate response to what the background is? You're probably going to say it's probably a city. Now, if we were to zoom in on the city itself, you notice that these are just strokes. These are seemingly random if we were to zoom in on these. Now, that's because we are relating the background to the whole. So, we look at the foreground, and we see this is probably a balcony with stairs, etc., etc. So, where would that be placed? It would most likely be within the city. Now, we don't need super details on the city. We get the fact that it's a city. And Pascal masterfully simplifies the background so that it doesn't take attention due to the details, but it gives just enough to get the sense that, hey, these are windows, these are lightings, these are cars, probably. It might not cars, I guess, but just windows and buildings in the background, skyscrapers. And we don't need that many details. It doesn't need to be perfect windows. A lot of people, especially starting artists, they try to use these Photoshop tricks to get all the windows in perfect perspective and such. But in reality, you don't really need to do that when it comes to storytelling and when it comes to abstraction. Now, that's different when you're trying to do technical illustration, but we'll leave that for another genre and another style. For storytelling purposes, you don't need to be perfect. We are not creating these skyscrapers as architects. We don't have to make them perfect, or else maybe people are gonna die from the skyscraper falling or something. When it comes to art, the point is you don't have to worry about that. We can get away with wonkier, more abstract buildings as long as it reads like they're buildings. And with the rest of the picture as well, we get a degree of details. So we go from very little detail over here, and then we start hitting towards the foreground, and we start, even though it's simplified, the girl and cat on the stairs are pretty articulate. The edges are sharper, and the curves and the straights are pretty defined. So we call this more detailed, even though it's a flatter coloring style. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, the second thing I'm going to talk about is value distribution. Value distribution is, again, something I always emphasize in these videos. We go with a 3 value palette, and we can get away with a lot of things, and Pascal is no stranger to that. His work is very shape-based, very graphic designy, so he makes it work very well with just 3 main values. So of course we can draw it out here. The darks would be the first one, and then we have the midtones, and then the lights of the windows as well as the areas in the background are the lights. Nothing too significant, we already know that. Now, why did I put in distribution? This is a question of where did you actually put your values now? How do you shape your values so that compositionally it makes sense? So this ties right into the third point, which is the quadrants. If we were to cut the composition into 4 quadrants, you realize all 4 quadrants have some instance of the 3 values. This is something my first year painting teacher taught me in college, and I still haven't seen a way to break this without ruining the composition. It always works. Now, the justification of this is we don't want any value, and most notably any colors as well, if your composition works with it. In most cases, rather. You don't want any quadrant to have an exclusive color or value. And what I mean by this is, imagine if only one quadrant has all the lights. Now, this is sort of like ruining the composition here. But imagine if we were to create a composition like this. Or rather, all the darks. So we start to notice, hey, perhaps something is wrong, and that's because only one quadrant holds all the most saturated colors, all the values, and it doesn't make sense compositionally. When it comes to utilizing your canvas space properly, the reason why we set this canvas to what it is is because we aim to utilize this canvas space to the best of our degree. So we do not want to have a composition where only one portion of it gets everything. This means that we could reasonably, let's assume that he did that. We could reasonably just cut a composition like this and it would make sense. We want to use our canvas space everywhere, and we don't want to waste space, or else people will subconsciously think, why do we need certain areas in our canvas? I hope that makes sense. So quadrants are a convenient way to make sure that you are not wasting space. If you have a problem when it comes to maybe the composition is leaning one way or another, perhaps you want to ask yourself first, are any of my quadrants holding some value that the others don't? Or any colors that others don't? This is one of the easiest way to check if you are balancing your composition properly. So notice that no matter where I zoom in, which quadrant I zoom in, you notice there are 3 values on all of them. Even if it's minimal for some of them. For example here, even this quadrant, that little bit here, right here, if you can see, oh whoops, this staircase railing here changes everything. If we were to remove that, it would change the entire dynamics of the composition. And Pascal Campion, if you look at all of his compositions, he does this very, very well in order to balance his work. Anyways, hopefully that was helpful. I know this is a bit short for one of these videos, but I am a little bit sick, so hopefully you enjoyed watching it anyways, and hope you learned something. And I'll see you next time.